That's 232. In this case, market believes the average inflation is going to be lower over the next 10 years. So the second 5 years has to be even lower.
I was going to say something about that. Yeah, it's interesting that they think inflation is going to be lower because they raised the debt ceiling. They say stocks are going to go up, which they will because of the interest accrued. But the common man's income is still stagnated. Like it
Yeah.
hasn't really risen. So also it's funny how they say that the inflation will lower, but the interest it keeps getting higher and higher. So because of that, the inflation is still going to keep getting higher. So I don't really understand.
You probably own gold, right? Or you want to own gold if you had money.
But yeah, I mean,
You're one of those guys who are effectively paying attention to what's called an Austrian economics. You know what's Austrian economics to Einsteinian physics? Okay. Now, think of Einstein's physics, general relativity, compare it to the physics of, not even Kepler, the Greeks, okay? They actually thought that so-called Ptolemean physics. This is the Greeks that were in Egypt around years negative 300. They actually thought that everything revolved around the Earth. Okay? And common current macroeconomics is, if current macroeconomics is Einsteinian physics, Austrian economics is Ptolemean physics. It is completely debunked year after year. They had the same arguments back in 2009. Fed actually decreased interest rates to zero, and they did what's called quantitative easing because they didn't want to make the interest rates negative, as the Europeans have done. It's, oh, there's going to be so much inflation. Sell all your money and buy gold. And those people, some people did that with leverage, and they're completely wiped out now. Do not learn your microeconomics from popular books. I mean, I don't particularly care about your political leanings. Do not learn your microeconomics from Ayn Rand, okay? Personally, you may think whatever you think on that lady, and I use that generously, but it's science doesn't lie. Okay, there is evidence. There is 200 years of monetary evidence that also in economics is complete bull. It's like saying the earth is flat. And there are some people who believe that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. As long as they don't work for NASA, I'm good with them. And as long as, you with those beliefs you don't work for the Fed, I'm good with you too. Learn from other sources, okay? There's a reason we make you take Econ 231. It is not a prerequisite on any classes, but we still make you take it because it's about macroeconomics. You need to think about stuff. Oh, anyway. In fact, there is a data series in Fed's economic research database. It's called FRED, France St. Louis. 5-year forwards, 5-year inflation. Let me see if Google, yep. Thank you, Google. There are actually swap contracts that are traded on this number, by the way. This basically means, I mean, I wouldn't calculate it exactly, they would, but for all intents and purposes, they give similar numbers. Let's just look at the last 1 year. For the 10-year tips, we calculated a break-even inflation, right? It was 232. And for the 5-year tips, we calculated a number that was 239. That means over the second 5 years, inflation should be lower. That's that number. That's the imputed inflation number for the second 5 years. So currently that number is 228. That's one of the reasons people do not believe that Fed is going to ease too much, because that is above Fed's target of 2. Fed is using a different index, but even then, Fed is using what was announced today, the so-called core PCE inflation. PC is personal consumption expenditures, and core means you take out the influence of food and energy, because those things tend to fluctuate a lot. Right now, that number is at 2.8, the 12 month number, and Fed wants to take that number to 2. That's why we're not going to see interest rates decreases very soon. Maybe in June, July, depending upon how inflation proceeds by then. And on top of this, oh, I didn't talk about the mother of all premiums, the default risk premium. Okay, everything else being the same, firms who are more likely to default have to pay more in interest than otherwise. Think about Apple versus, I don't know, let's say Palantir Technologies. They don't have bonds outstanding, but if they did, they would have had to pay a lot more. So then you can put something like default risk premium. Then you could put other stuff, like taxability plus liquidity. But if you're looking at only treasury yield curve, the only things that matter is interest rate risk premium and inflation risk premium. Just to give you an idea, the difference in default risk premium. Again, Fred is a good source to get all sorts of data. I'm going to look at the option adjusted spread for single A. The reason we call this option adjusted, certain bonds have embedded options like calls and the puts, and treasuries typically don't. This is after adjusting for those. If you're a company that is rated single A, which is pretty good, slightly below the rating that would allow pension funds to buy your bond, you would pay 82 basis points over and above comparable treasuries. So if treasuries are 420, you're going to pay 502. Let's look at the same thing for double A. That's 54. And the difference between single A and double A can actually be bought by pension funds, which are huge. So that's about 30 basis points. You want to look at the single B. That's 325. Single B is in the junk territory or sub-investment grade. And if treasuries are paying 4.2, you have to pay 8.45. That's the default risk premium. All right. I'm going to stop here. Again, think about your groups. You don't have to tell me a group of 4. If there are 2 or 3 people you want to be in the same group, let me know. I'll fill in the blanks with the rest. But if you have 4, that's even better. And we have exactly 36 students left. We have 2 that had dropped, 1 dropped after the exam. And so we'll have 4 groups, 9 groups of 4.
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah,
Sorry for blowing up on like this morning. I just had a really terrible morning. I didn't want to, you know.
shit happens. I mean, yesterday I there was a big storm warning, so I did my morning class on Zoom, and I was going to come for my afternoon class, and I had one of the worst diarrhea started.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I had to be close to my bathroom. I couldn't even do Zoom.
Right.
So I told them, in fact, I'm going to use the lecture I gave you guys on Tuesday, because I was going to talk about exactly the same thing.
I got you.
I'm just going to post that. Stuff happens.
Yeah, I got you. It's just I know it's uncouth, and I just wanted to be a man about it and come here instead of